I'm Mahdi Shaheeb Sher. My website is www.mahdishaheebsher.com. I think one of my interests in the world is Mahdi Shaheeb Sher. Is kind of American trade in the world. I think America does have a monopoly of trade in the world. I think America owns 90% of trade in the world. I think that's how dominant America is in the world. I think America is quite powerful in the world. It is something like a superpower in the world. So I think in that respect, America is very dominant, powerful, and in terms of and like an economic superpower. If you look at which countries in world history have commanded a monopoly of world trade and dominated trade around the world, America has. I don't think many countries have. So I think America is a unique example of a country um, to follow that has kind of monopolized world trade. I think with Europe and America to own 90% of world trade through its corporations is a very significant testament to how powerful its manufacturing industry is, but also its network of retail shops, its consumer interests and appetite for consumer goods, um, and fashions and luxury items, including Hollywood and fast food and clothing and retail. I think for countries to invest so much in shops as much as it does in housing for people, to create a whole consumer population that kind of feeds off of spend mentality and then creates wealth for a country based on that consumer spending. So I think that's how countries gain their wealth and build their countries through retail and consumer spending. So I think to see the world develop as an economic power based on uh, expenditure and spending habits is quite phenomenal. I think most of the world traditionally has depended on kind of traditional dependable forms of living and economy and wealth generation. But I think the Western world, with its background in colonialism and also trade and shipping, is very much focused on money, trade, and wealth. And I think how that's developed over the past 500 years is what we see today, the modern form of corporate, which kind of consume the whole wealth of nations with kind of dominating other countries' populations and consumers with their own goods. So I think that America is able to dominate the world economy and the global economy. I think that most of the countries don't have much of an economy of their own because most of it's owned by foreign corporations. So I think that America is able to generate something like $5 trillion worth of maybe trade a year, and that could be equivalent to maybe $15 trillion worth of trade. So it is quite a phenomenal spectacle to see a trade giant that is America dominated by big business and corporations. I think that for American corporations to be able to flood the world with their own American goods like Nike trainers and Levi jeans or maybe Adidas uh, tracksuit bottoms or any other consumer goods like iPods and iPhones and whatever else people buy in shops. But I think that's how countries do depend on for their income and wealth. It's a kind of expectation that their population become kind of loyal consumers and commit to their daily spending um, threshold, which commits them to buying things on a regular basis. And I think with that kind of consumer attitude, then there is a consumer driven world that is very hungry in the world, consuming goods and luxury goods. And I think the world can do better by being more focused on producing goods that are perhaps used. Maybe they could be disposable services and used for the benefit of developing countries and societies. So I think that economic models and the Western view of consumers and shopping is a bit outdated. I think that the world can move on from American democracy. There may be other kind of things we've depended on the past few years. I think it's very much a post World War II way of the world where, because of a need for wide scale post World War II construction, there is a need for perhaps consumer spending and building. And unfortunately, this is a kind of luxury and kind of consumer driven world that we live in. It can be seen as a decadent, perhaps a wasteful world, perhaps more self-absorbed and maybe ego-driven rather than value-added for the benefit and values of countries. I think industries can be more knowledge-driven, service-driven, and technology-driven rather than entertainment-driven and consumer-driven. So it's not so much food and leisure or entertainment or satisfying individual appetites to make consumers feel good. I think how a country should develop its wealth with the wealth of different countries and different areas of the world is by producing national goods for the benefit of its country. And I think this national production of goods and services for the benefit and interest of a country should be the main priority of individual appetites that might be a personal interest. So I think there can be a higher vision of how countries can perhaps envision a world where national goals precede personal interests for economic development. And I think when we have this economic capacity in mind for national interest, and that should be the key word, I think we should have an economy for national interest. And I think in that way we are able to create larger buildings and perhaps engines and machines and perhaps vehicles and other things that are perhaps more substantive than mere luxury items that perhaps drive the economy. So I think when we look at which countries can benefit from growing economically in the world, we should have maybe more tiger economies like Asia, like Japan and maybe China, and maybe also Brazil, Russia, India, and China as well, that are kind of the advanced economies of the future, like BRICS nations, kind of like the G10 countries of the future and the advanced economies of the future. They become powers because they are advanced economic powers of the future, um, and they're equal players compared to the Western world, but perhaps more powerful than the Western world. I think these examples of BRICS nations do pick up the rest of the world, like Vietnam and Cuba, and perhaps African countries, and maybe South American countries as well. So there's an example for the rest of the world to follow economically in competing up to the standards of the